Today we're going to completely understand curves, and by the end of the video I guarantee that most of you will fall in love with this tool. Now when it comes to curves, there are two ways of applying it. One, as an adjustment layer. Two, as an adjustment. So you can go ahead and create an adjustment layer by clicking on the adjustment layer button and then choosing curves. This creates a curves adjustment layer. Now any changes you make over here can be changed. For example, you made this change. Okay. You want to change it. You double click over here on the symbol and you can change it anytime. You can reduce the opacity. You can do a lot of stuff. You can change the blend modes, right? And you can move the layer. You can just turn it off, turn it on. There's so much more flexibility with it. You can create a clipping mask, right? So let's go ahead and delete it. Select the curves adjustment layer, press the delete key to delete it. Now the other way is going to image, adjustment, and then curves, or Control or Command M. That's the shortcut. Now you can do any changes you want. For example, I increase the contrast and then I hit OK. Now what it's doing is it's burning the effect to the pixels. So it's burning everything down to pixels. There's no going back. For example, I wanted to change the curves. I cannot do that. But of course you can go ahead and do this. Let's go back. You can right click on the background layer and convert it to Smart Object. And then when you go ahead and apply curves, go to image, adjustments, and then curves. And when you make a change here and hit OK, this applies as a smart filter. Of course, you can go ahead, double click on it and change it anytime you wish. But in my opinion, adjustment layers are much more flexible. There's so much more you can do with it, especially on composites. Also for adjustment layers, you can apply an adjustment layer and it applies to all the layers beneath it. All right. So we're going to go the adjustment layer route. So let's delete the smart filter. Let's go back. Okay, right. So let's create a curves adjustment layer by clicking on the adjustment layer icon and then choosing curves. Now curves are very simple. All we have to understand is one extremely simple statement. Let's have a look at the curves. The right side represents the bright pixels and the left side represents the dark pixels. Listen to it very carefully. The right side represents the bright pixels. The left side represents the dark pixels. Going up makes it brighter or adds. Going down makes it darker or subtract. Again, right side bright, left side dark. Going up makes it brighter or adds. Going down makes it darker or subtracts. Easy. So, for example, you want to make the bright pixels brighter. So I would make a point on the right hand side. So this is the right hand side. What is the corresponding area on the line? This one. So I will make a point over there. You want to make the bright pixels brighter. So you would take it up, right? Up makes it brighter. Down makes it darker. Take it up. Easy. Very easy. And you want to make the dark pixels darker. So where are the darks? Darks are on the left hand side. So click a point on the left hand side. You want to make it darker. You would take it down. So take it down just like this. And this is the classic S curve. And that's what contrast is, right? Contrast is making the brights brighter and the darks darker. So let's have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Very simple. Now let me show you one more example. Now when it comes to curves, if you want to reset the curves, all you have to do, click on this button right over there. Click on it, it resets it. Now, let's say you want to brighten up the dark pixels without disturbing the bright pixels. So I would click a point on the left, just like so. And I would brighten up the dark pixels. But it also brightens up the bright pixels. As you can see, look at the line over there. In this area as well, the line is up. So you would click a point over there, bring it back just to the diagonal. That's it. That way, only dark pixels are brightened. Now let me show you one more trick. Have a look at this button. If you click and hold, if you press and hold this button, this shows you before curves. If you release it, it's after curves. Now the curves has three more channels: red, green, and blue. And before we head over to the channels, keep in mind the opposites. RGB is the opposite of CMY. Red is the opposite of cyan. Green is the opposite of magenta, and blue is the opposite of yellow. Just keep that in mind. Let's move on to the red channel. So click on the drop down list over here and let's go ahead and choose red. the same theory applies here. For example, you want to add red in the highlights. So you would click a point on the right hand side because right represents the bright, left dark. So make a point. Now you want to add red, right? For addition, we go up. For subtraction, we go down. So you would take it up. Now you want to subtract red from the dark areas. Click a point on the left hand side, you take it down. Now when you do that, have a look. It adds cyan to it. It appears as if cyan is being added because red is being subtracted, and red is the opposite of cyan. Let me show you one more example. If I go to blue, and suppose I want to add yellow in the highlights, okay? Yellow in the extreme highlights. So I would take down the blue because blue is the opposite of yellow. So the extreme highlight is on the right hand side, right for the highlights and left for the shadows. So I will just take it down. So decreasing the blues would make yellow show up. Have a look at it. It's absolutely jaundiced right now. Okay, pretty cool, right? Let's reset it. And for this image, I'm going to do a simple edit. For example, I'm going to make the brights a little brighter, just like that. I'm going to make the darks a little darker. And the way we do the faded effect, we make the extreme dark areas, completely black areas, a little lighter. And we just take the extreme left a little up to create a faded effect. And then, for example, you want to add blue to the shadows. We go to the blue channel and then take up the blues in the extreme shadows. Maybe let's take down the blues in the highlights to add yellow to it. So, very simple effect, extremely simple to do. And that's it for the curves. Now, all that being said, do you want to go a little more deeper, advanced? Let's do it. Now you might ask, hey Unmesh, how can you be so sure about the left representing the darks and the right representing the brights? Well, all you have to do is to look at the bar. Not that one, this bar. Let's zoom into the curves. Have a look at this bar. On the left hand side, what does it have? Black. And as it goes to the right hand side, it becomes brighter and brighter and eventually white. Similarly happens with this vertical axis. Now, keep in mind, these are scaled from 0 to 255. So here you have 0, here you have 128, and here you have 255. With 0 being absolutely dark, completely black, 128 being 50% gray, and 255 absolutely white, okay? Similarly, on this vertical axis or the y-axis, 0 is making 100% black, and 255 is making 100% white. So for example, you want to make the midtones 100% white. I don't know why you would do that. You can click a point in the middle, and you can take it all the way up to 255. Have a look. The midtones are completely white. All right, let's reset it. Now, why did I teach you about scaling from 0 to 255? There was a reason behind it, and that is input and output. So this axis that you see, this horizontal axis, x-axis, is the input axis. And this vertical axis or the y-axis is the output axis. So 0 to 255 in RGB channel, think of them as brightness values. 0 absolutely black, 128 50% gray, and 255 100% white. So for example, you want to select the pixels with a brightness value of, let's say, 128. So you would click a point over here and set the input to 128. 128. Now, you want to make the pixels with a brightness value of 128 to, let's say, 160. So you would set the output to 160. So this has become brighter. So what it's basically doing is it's taking the pixels with a brightness value of 128 and increasing their value to 160. So grabbing the 128 pixels, increasing their value to 160. So that is what input and output is. So this one is the input axis and the vertical axis is the output axis. So that's why we chose 128th value and we made it 160 because here this one is 128 and this one is 160. I hope that makes sense to you. Similarly, we can make multiple points. For example, I made a point over here. We chose 54th bright pixel, and we can just decrease the amount to, let's say, 30. So we chose the pixels with a brightness value of 54 and reduced their value to 30. So what does this all teach us? Input is which pixels you want to modify, and the output is how you want to modify them, right? So I want to modify pixels with a value of, let's say, 164 brightness value, and how you want to modify them, that's the output. Look at this axis. I want to make it brighter. I want to make 163 value pixels 197. That is the output, and this is the output axis. Now, one of the most intelligent questions that I've been asked about the curves is this. Unmesh, why is this line diagonal? Why is it not horizontal? Why is it not vertical? What makes it diagonal? Great question. I'm so glad you asked. Let's zoom in and have a look at this. So, let's have a look at the extreme left. So what does the extreme left represent? 100% black, right? Absolute darkness. Now, taking up makes it brighter. Taking down makes it darker. But here's the problem. You cannot make anything which is 100% black blacker, right? You cannot make anything which is absolute dark darker. And that's why you hit a wall. So we can make it brighter, we can make the darks brighter, but we cannot make the darkest darker. It's just not possible. So that's why it is down here on the left hand side at the bottom. It hits a wall. This is the kind of the surface that it hits. Now, have a look at the extreme right hand side. So what does this represent? 100% white or absolute brightness. You cannot make anything which is absolutely white whiter, right? So that's why you hit the roof on the right hand side. So on the right hand side, you hit the roof. On the left hand side, you hit the bottom or the surface, and that makes the line diagonal. Now let's have a look at some real-world applications of curves, and along the way, we will also learn some great features inside of it. So let's have a look at this composite. So this was this originally, and then I removed this guy. I'm so sorry about that. And then I added this lady. As you can see, the colors are not matching. So we can use curves to match elements of a composite. So to do that, all you need to do is to create a curves adjustment layer. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose curves. Now, if you make any change right over here, it changes the background as well as the subject. You want to make sure that it's limited just to the subject. So you can click on this button. This is Create Clipping Mask button. It limits it just to the subject. All right. So now let me just rename it to subject so that it's more clearer to you. Let's move back to the properties, and anytime you want to open the properties of any adjustment layer, just click on this symbol and it will be right there. Every adjustment layer has its own symbol. So let's zoom in and move it this way. Now let's reset it. Click on the reset button. Now as you can see, the darks are not as dark as the background, but we can make them, right? So let's make the darks a little darker. I'm going to move this slider to the right. Is this getting you confused? What is this slider doing? Have a look at the input output. It will all make sense. So the input is 20. As we move the slider, the input value increases and the output value stays 0, which means that if I increase it to this amount, all the pixels of brightness level 26 and similar pixels nearby are selected, and their value is reduced to 0. So pixels with a brightness value of 26 have been reduced to the brightness value of 0. Okay, so let's take the slider a little bit to the right, just like so. And maybe we want to make it a little darker. We want to take it a little down, just a touch. All right, now let's zoom out, have a look at the before and after. As you can see, let's move the curves to the left hand side. It's already matching a lot. And you can click and hold on this button to have a look before the curves. You can release it after the curves. Already it's matching a lot. Let's move on to the other channels. Let's move on to the red channel. Click on the drop down and let's select red. Zoom into the image and have a look at the highlights first. So as you can see in the highlights, there's a ton of red and we want to reduce it. So click on the right hand side. Let's reduce it so it looks great. But have a look at the shadows over here. There's too much cyan and we want to add red to the shadows. So we will click and take it up until it looks normal. So for me, this looks fine. It's great. Now let's move on to the green channel. I guess there's too much green. Let's fit it to the screen. Let's try to decrease green a little bit, just a touch. Okay, let's move on to the blue channel. As you can see in the shadows again, there's a tiny bit of blue. So we can reduce blue in the shadows. So click and drag it down. But what it's doing is, it's also reducing blues in the highlights, thus making it yellow. So we would click a point at the highlights, we would take it to normal. And now I want you to have a look at this. So here is the before, not matching at all. And have a look at the after. Absolutely matching. Easy, right? Now if this is confusing, let's make it more easier for you. Let's reset it. Click on the reset button. Okay. Now, all you need to use is the hand tool right over there. Have a look here. The hand tool. Just click on that. If you don't know where the highlight is, what are the shadows, if you're getting confused where to click, all you need to do is this. So as you can see, the shadows are brighter. So you would just click and drag it down to make it darker. Easy. Done. Great. You don't even have to look here. Just look in the image and visually do it. Let's move on to the red channel. There's too much red in the highlights. So I know this is the highlight. I know the skin is going too red in the highlights. So I would just click on in here and drag it down. Just like so. And shadows are becoming too cyan-ish. So I'll just click on the shadows and drag it up. Just like so. Very easy to do. Similarly, we'll go to the green channel. Generally, I see a lot of greens. So I'll just click and drag it down. And then I'll go to the blue channel. For example, there's too much blues in the shadows. So I'll just click and drag it down. And decreasing the blues is making the highlights yellowish. So we will go to the highlights and just keep it normal. Wasn't this easier? You can also use curves to stylize your images and make them pop. Let's have a look at this example. So if you go ahead and create a curves adjustment layer, let me show you one more feature in this case. Let's stick it in here. Okay. Have a look at this. This is the histogram inside the curve. In other words, it shows you how many pixels there is in each region. As you can see, in the midtones, we have a ton of pixels. And on the highlights, we don't have so many pixels, not even in the shadows. So this picture is a little bit mid-tone oriented. So as we move from left to right, for this brightness level, we have this many pixels. Let me just zoom it in for you. For this brightness level, we have this many pixels. For this brightness level, we have this many. For the midtones, we have so much of pixels, and then it goes down. It's just like a graph. To expand the range and make your images pop, you can easily use this trick. Let's zoom in. Let me show you something interesting. Have a look. Beyond this point, there are no pixels. At this brightness level, there is no rise, which means there are no pixels brighter than this. Okay. Also, beyond this point, there are very less pixels. So there are no pixels darker than this. So what if we make the brightest pixel in this image absolutely white? And what if we make the darkest pixel in this image absolutely dark? Wouldn't that make the image pop? So that's an artistic choice. We can easily do that without losing the details by holding the Alt key or the Option key. And as you move the slider, just the point where you begin to see the artifacts, it means that you're losing details in those areas. Have a look at the red areas. If I move beyond this, those are the areas where we are losing details. So stop at just the point where you begin to see those. So I'm going to stop right there. Okay. And similarly on the left hand side, I'm going to stop right there. Okay, let's have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Just a tiny bit of pop. Now we can move to other channels as well to add some color to it. For example, you want to add yellow in the highlights. So we would go to blue because blue is the opposite of yellow, and decrease the blues in the extreme highlights. You can do that very easily, and increase the blues in the shadows. Just a tiny bit of it. This is kind of too much. Okay, this is exciting. Now let's move to greens. We want a little bit of magenta in the darks. So we'll just add it a little bit, and we'll take it up in the highlights. Now let's move on to reds. Let's try decreasing reds in the shadows and increasing reds in the highlights or the midtones a little bit. Have a look. The skin is looking so nice, warm. This is amazing. Now let's move back to RGB and let's try to take it a little bit more to the left. We are losing details. We better not do that. Let's make a point over here and let's make it a little brighter. And we want to make these areas a little darker. So we can use the hand tool and see where those points lie. So I'm going to click and drag it down. You can adjust it over here later. Have a look at this. Just a tiny bit of edit. So this is the before, a different kind of flat look. And this is the after with a little bit of pop. You can also decrease the opacity if you think it's too much. So I'm going to go ahead with an opacity of, let's say, 59 is fine for this one. Now there are tons of other uses of curves. All you need to do is to go to Piximperfect YouTube channel. In the search bar, type in curves. And you will find tons of videos on how to apply curves in different scenarios. The applications are limitless, be it compositing, color grading, color correction, check layers, and whatnot. I hope this video helped you, and I hope you get to explore curves a little more. I hope you apply this in your workflow. I hope this makes a difference for you, and if it does, make sure to give us a like, and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe. Ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss any other future tip, trick, or tutorial. I would like to take this moment to thank all these nice and amazing people for supporting Piximperfect on Patreon and helping keep Piximperfect free for everybody forever. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.